of the transfer window for Everton trading with teams in European football and the Premier League. There's about an hour left of it, and I think we're all quite happy that it's coming to a close. Like I said, we are live on YouTube tonight, so let us know your comments, let us know your thoughts on everything. We'll have a few different guests coming on the show throughout the course of the next hour or so, just to talk about Everton's transfer business so far in the window. And the one deal that looks like it might get done in terms of incomings, that's Robin Olsen on loan from Roma, Swedish international goalkeeper, to provide some potential competition for Jordan Pickford. But joining me to start this show off, Rob Vera, who's going to be here for the duration. Rob, how are you doing, mate?
Doing great. It's funny that this is normally the hour counting down to the window closing where I'm reflecting on all the disappointment of what we didn't do in the window. So I actually slept relatively well last night, just because as much as I was hoping for a keeper and maybe a striker to come in, it's really hard to argue with the overall quality and impact of the business we've done up to this point. And the fact that, I think I said it at the time, the fact that we got all of our major signings done before the season started, no less, was a huge bonus to me. And you see our position in the table and you see how important that was. So, feeling pretty good. We'll talk about some of the concerns with maybe some of the incomplete work here or there, some of the curious moves of the last few days, but overall, I feel great.
And Les Roberts joins us as well. Les is doing one of the early stints because he's going to be joining me on Blue Room Breakfast in the morning over on the Blue Room Extra. But I know it says Matt Jones on his little Zoom box as well, but I can assure you it is Les Roberts. How are you, mate? Are you ready for the transfer deadline to end, or did you enjoy Sky Sports' Darren Farley impressions and Paul Merson's analysis of the Gunnosaurus sacking today?
Thankfully, I missed all that because I was at footy training. So I just came to a sort of like a torrent of messages on WhatsApp and on Twitter saying how bad and how embarrassing Farley was. I mean, he's a bit of a one-trick pony, isn't he? He does scouse footballers for a living. That's it. Pretty rubbish. I missed Merson. What did they have to say about Gunnosaurus? Was he a good mate of his?
He was saying that there's a generation of Arsenal fans that have grown up with Gunnosaurus, and it's a disgrace that he's been sacked. I mean, I think what Arsenal have done with a lot of people there who is terrible, but it was just quite surreal for him to be talking about it. It was very strange indeed.
Well, yeah, it's pretty obscene what Arsenal have done, isn't it? When you look at the players they've signed and the money they're throwing already rich athletes for them to sack 55 staff, of one of which is Gunnosaurus. I think I put on Twitter earlier today, they're not to make light of the situation, obviously it's really, really bad, but the Gunnosaurus thing's just a little bit surreal. There was never this fuss when Dixie got binned from Everton, was there? Dixie,
absolutely
the toffee man.
Mate.
Do you know what I mean?
Where's Mr. Testicles? He's not been seen since that game all those years ago as well.
No.
So, yeah, disappointing one as well. Also just joined us on the call is Jack Carlisle. Jack, obviously, people who listen to your Blue Room 101 with Dave last week will have been aware that you absolutely hate everything to do with deadline day. So I'm sure you're glad it's all over and done with now.
Yeah, I was going to say pot kettle black with me tearing up on the call. But yeah, I think it seems, especially with Everton, where we're concerned, it seems to have been a good few years since there's been sort of anything really one way or another, good or bad. I think overall it's been fine today. I think it was a good signing this morning, but I think, if I'm honest, I didn't really expect too much out of today, like one way or another. I'm not sure about you guys. I mean, I think the only thing I would have said was it would have been nice to get a few more out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that still could happen. Obviously, Theo Walcott's the one that's been linked all day with Southampton. There's been pictures of him in his Southampton kit, hasn't there, all day on social media as well. So you'd imagine that one will get done. There's been some talk about Besic going to Rangers, although that one doesn't look like it's going to necessarily materialise. And there's a lot of lads who I imagine the club would have wanted to got off the books who are still here. But one of the things I'm going to be asking people tonight is just standard fare at the end of the window, isn't it, really, to give Everton a rating for it. Of course, we could still sign a Championship player over the next few weeks. Josh King has been mentioned. So if you're in the comments, pinned the tweet there, let us know. Give Everton a rating out of 10. Most of them are very high so far. Rob, I'll come to you first on this one. quickly, I want a number and a 1 minute summation of Everton's window from you.
Yeah. And again, with 55 minutes left to go, I suppose there could be a minor change to this, but man, you can quibble with the selling of Keane and not bringing in another striker, or I'm sure people have already begun quibbling over, oh, well, why didn't we get a great goalkeeper instead of just, kind of an average replaced, competition sort of type or whatever. But I don't know how you can look at our position in the table, look at the specific impacts of the main players we brought in, and give this anything lower than an 8.5 or a 9. That's probably where I'm at right now, just because as much as I do care about outgoings and bottom lines, because I know that makes accounting nerds really horny to talk about. I'm mostly concerned with, did we significantly improve the product on the pitch? We absolutely have. I think that's unequivocal. And so I feel really good about it. We had a very specific need to create, to basically fortify our central midfield, or actually to get a central midfield, if you will. And we also needed more chance creation, and we brought in a transcendent figure in James Rodriguez. And the impact has not just been their play, but it's been the trickle-down effect to others in the squad who suddenly look very useful, like Gylfi Sigurdsson, like Alex Iwobi, and others. So I mean, I don't know how you can be anything but pretty ecstatic with things. It could have been maybe slightly better, but I think you're kind of quibbling around the edges at that point.
You in the same sort of boat there, Les? Around the same sort of area for a rating?
Yeah, I was going 8, which is probably, as Rob said, might be a little bit on the low side. But I think the lack of a keeper has sort of grown in prominence as the season's gone on, and I think it's just sort of tainted our start of the season a little bit, hasn't it? Because he's the one player now who does really does look dodgy, and it's something that we all had our suspicions about, that this could be a long-term thing with him. That is, it's not just a blip in form, because it's been longer than just a prolonged section of a season. It's been quite a while now, and it's creeping into this season. He looks like the one weak link in the team. But yeah, that's probably being a little bit harsh, because if he'd have said at the start we were going to sign James Rodriguez, Allen and Abdoulaye Doucouré, I think I'd have said that was probably about a 12 out of 10, if I'm honest. So yeah, I'm probably tempering the score a little bit, just because I think as well, we've got a cracking first 11 now. As I said before, this is probably the best balanced team I've seen in a long time at Everton. Scratch below that, and there's good cover, but a few injuries in, and we could, there might not be that depth there that we need. I'm just being a miserable get here, aren't I, really?
It does feel like one of them, Jack, doesn't it? Where if you'd said, ahead of this window, like Les said there, that we're going to sign these exact players, we would have been absolutely made up. But given the start we've had and the excitement, and people thinking we're going to, smash the Reds in 2 weeks and win the title, there's all of a sudden a wave of optimism and talk about what we can potentially do. And I think that's where disappointment does come in the form of a goalkeeper, doesn't it? And listen, Olsen could come in and be great, albeit some of the reports about him are a bit hit and miss. But if we're being greedy, maybe we could say 8 or 7. But I'm putting words in your mouth here, mate. What do you think?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I always find it interesting, these sort of scenarios, because I think a lot of it depends on timing, doesn't it? Like, if we would have announced Godfrey earlier on, and then it was Nkunku, and then all of a sudden in this past week it was Doucouré, then Allen, then James. I think the way you look at it's a lot different, isn't it? I think the fact that we've done our business sort of early, you'd say, for us, and before sort of we had the chance to mess up the start of the season, means that you're sort of in a bit of an uncomfortable position where you're heading into deadline day really sort of fine with how things are. We should be happy, but I think similarly to Les, I think I'm an 8. I don't necessarily think we've done anything wrong in terms of incomings. I think there's the two points really. One with the forward that we didn't get for letting Moise Keane go out. I think something might happen with that, as you mentioned, with Josh King in the next 2 weeks. And also, I think we're still pretty hamstrung by the fact that I personally don't think at this moment in time we've let enough people go off the wage bill to be able to just go and splurge. Like, I'd completely forgotten about Tosin, like Balassi. Like, there's still people there that are on like upwards of like 6 figures a week. We're not going to go and give somebody else 6 figures a week to be cover. Like, it's just not going to happen at the minute. In terms of the goalkeeper, I do have a bit of sympathy here, because I think obviously up until this point, the previous sort of 6-7 weeks, he's been given a chance to prove that he is the long-term number one with his age, with the contract he's on, with the money we paid for him. I don't think sort of even the most hardened Evertonian would have said he's definitely not the right man. Might have been on the way, but I think how he started the season post that game against Spurs, I really don't know what more he could have done. Like, what you're basically asking him to do in the past sort of, say, 4 weeks is write Pickford off and go and find a number one now. For me, I just don't think that was ever going to be foreseeable, because I think the plan this summer was always the midfield, and they've done that and then some. I do think the goalkeeping issue will remain an issue until it no longer is. I suppose that's a bit of a cliche, but I think until we know what's happening, then I think there will be a question mark, but I just don't think it was this window where it was going to happen.
I think that's fair.
Oh,
sorry,
ahead,
Rob. Go on, mate.
I was just going to say, I think Jack makes a really good point. Because we've had these sorts of conversations all summer. I think, I mean, I've been kind of out on Pickford for longer than just this season, obviously. But look, when you signed him to that gigantic extension for big money, you basically painted yourself into a corner of saying, replacing him replacing him or bringing in a new number one has to be further down on our list of priorities, because we've got to try and find a way to make him work. We've committed to him. We've made, we've committed all this money to him. And so everything else, like, I mean, we can go through a litany of the things that I would have liked to have maybe still addressed. I think that, especially right now with the injury situation, I still think there was a good argument for bringing another right back in. I'm not convinced by John Joe Kenny, or, if we're going to let Moise Keane go, finding a way to replace another striker. But Jack makes a really good point. Like, you've not, because of a variety of factors, been able to move certain players off of the wage bill, and it's an unruly sized squad to begin with. And I think they wanted to give Pickford. I think with Pickford, a lot of it has been they've just hoped that these yips that he's got now would just go away. Yeah. He would have a break. You go through Project Restart and then go through a break, and he would just kind of mellow out. And he'd take time off, whatever. But it's not. Whatever he's going through is not going away. It has not gone away, to the point now where, the manager says all the right things, but again, don't trust anything that a manager says in a press conference. You judge them by their actions. And the fact is, they've brought in another keeper when they said that they weren't looking to do that. And they seemed to do something that was today, which was very stopgap. And I don't want to call it desperate or anything like that, because I think it's meant to be a low risk loan move that essentially provides some competition for this season so they can address this again next summer. But, I think Jack's right. Like, I don't think that it was ever realistic to get in a new number one in 48 hours or whatever, after another bad game. I really think they've held on as long as they could, hoping that Pickford would snap out of this, and it just doesn't seem to be working. And so now they try something new, and depending on how this goes, they try something again next summer.
I think it goes back to what the manager himself said, Les, doesn't it? And it's sort of, he said before this window that it's going to be a case of evolution, not revolution. And it's sort of we've got into that mode, I think, of feeling like it's going to be a revolution because of the players we've signed and the high quality of the players we've signed and the amount of players we've signed in the end. I think we're on about 6 signings, aren't we now, for this summer window? Having thought that at one point that we were just going to be loans and free transfers, and we also have to change our mindset. And I think, I think sort of agree with what the lads have said there. The money was clearly invested in the midfield. I think they went into this summer with an intention to back the goalkeeper and hope that he can, rediscover the form he showcased in his first season at the football club. And that's not happened. But I think, at least with Olsen, and I've not seen tons of him, to be honest. He's obviously not kicked on at Roma at all. He's had a few issues and made a few mistakes. I think what this signing does is that it gives the manager a player he can trust to bring in if Pickford keeps chucking them in every other week. And that's not something we've got at the moment with Jonas Lossell and João Virginia.
Yeah, the Lossell one's always been a funny one to me. The fact that he left and then came back, and it was like, well, what's his... He was sort of like the Stecklenberg V.2, wasn't he? Because he was just sort of there, and there was never any danger of him getting in the first team. I think the thing for me with the goalkeeping situation is it's frustrating because you look at that as the one part in the team now that could really hamstring us, and you think, we've got the Reds coming up next. This is a big, big opportunity for us, given our run of form, their result yesterday, and you just look at him and you think, if he flaps this now and he throws another one in, where do we go from there? Okay, we get this fella in, which, it looks like it's probably as good a deal as he could have got. And, he's 6'5". He's a big lad, because I think that's one thing that does go against Pickford, his size. He doesn't look commanding at all, and he doesn't look confident anymore. When he had that confidence, he was fine. But yeah, I think you're right. It probably is unfair to expect him to do much in that regard, because they were sort of giving him his chance, and maybe he's a different player in training, maybe he's not like that, maybe it's the game that gets him, we don't know, do we? But yeah, we all said at the start that the midfield was the pressing concern, and we've gone out and covered that, as Jack said, and then some. So can't be too disappointed, but I think my mind is so focused on that Derby game now, because it's an absolutely huge opportunity for us. I just don't want Softlat to throw one in.
But I think all the reports indicate that Olsen sort of come in as backup / competition to Pickford. And just before we get through some of the comments on YouTube, and I asked the lads a few more questions, how do you think Pickford will react to this, Jack? I suppose it's not just the fact that Everton have brought in a goalkeeper who is more likely to challenge him, but it's pretty clear today, based on all the reporting and the way Everton have scampered around to try and find a goalkeeper last minute, that there's not total faith in him at the moment. And maybe that's something he's sort of been aware of for a while and been subconsciously aware of for a while, but this is probably the biggest indication for him, isn't it? The manager's not completely sure on him. And if he doesn't get his act together, he's going to be out the side or out the door next summer.
Yeah, well, I think, to be honest, I'd be more worried if he didn't think, well, maybe things aren't sort of as they should be, because you've only got to look at the performances of everybody else around the team. Like, if you were to average him out, even just give him a binary number 1 to 10, he would be the lowest, and then some, wouldn't he? Like, as a person that had played as many minutes as he has. In terms of his reaction, I really don't know. My honest opinion is I don't think it'll change. I think this is an issue that we're going to have for the rest of the season, as I've said. Not that you won't still have good games and bad games. I think, I'm just talking on the whole, I can't foresee having slightly higher level of competition as it should be. Having, I hope I'm wrong, but having a massive up 10 is consistency. Now he's played for us, is it 4 years?
Yeah, this will be his 4th season, I think, isn't it? Yeah. Right.
I don't know. I'm really sort of, I don't know what's going to change the way he is, because it's not like it's been a month or it's been a couple of weeks. This isn't knee-jerk now. This is more the norm than his first season was. So for me to say, oh, well, maybe this is what's going to need to shake him out of this rut. Well, if 75% of your time, or what is it now, so 2 seasons out of 3, 2/3 of your time is spent being this very, very erratic goalkeeper, I don't think... as an Evertonian, I'd like to think that, well, if he does continue with the complete up and down nature of his performances, that we've at least got an alternative. Because now, obviously, it's worrying that we don't even seem to know at the minute who the second choice keeper is.
Yeah.
Which to me is bonkers. Not that I necessarily think your second choice keeper needs to be like as good as your first, but I don't know, because they were doing the two keepers on the bench for weeks, and then they just brought Virginia in for like a game, and then he's gone again, and there's obviously no real backing of any of them outside of Pickford, and then even with that, it's backing with a very small B, isn't it? Like, I think personally this will probably be his last season starting for us. Whether it means that Olsen is starting by the end of this season, or if he's just the next placeholder, such as Stecklenberg, Vessels, Carlo Nash, I don't know. But I do think this will be his last season as our number one.
Yeah, unless something changes around dramatically, I totally agree with you there, mate. Just some of the comments I'm going to quickly read out as well in regards to the ratings. Bradley Rettler said, got to say 10 out of 10. Identify the areas of need and filled them with quality. Alan Decore, James, Godfrey and Kunku looks like a gem. Could use a right back and a goalkeeper, but you can't have everything. EFC 1878 Mark said 9 out of 10, but do we need a right back / right winger? Probably need the top goalkeeper to achieve our aims. Drew Yardley said definitely a 9 out of 10. Fees we paid were spot on as well. Jake Jones, 9 out of 10. Get Josh King in. We'll do a couple more. Laura Gates, even Laura says, big fan of Les's hoodie this evening.
Nice one.
There you go.
It's one for M&M Sports. No expense spared here.
There we go. Jake Marley, a solid 9. Every player has brought in and improved the starting lineup in the squad. Would have liked another striker for depth, a more reliable keeper, and a few more bodies out ideally. And we'll do one more rating. Very quick. Chris Hammond, 9 out of 10. Upgrade on Pickford would have been a 10 out of 10. And one more. John Caballero, 8 out of 10. Need a right-sided cover and comfort Pickford. Jack and Les are going to be leaving us in about 3 or 4 minutes. So quickly, I'll ask them the questions put out on Twitter before. So obviously asked everybody to give a rating out of 10 for the transfer window as a whole from Everton's point of view. And I also asked for the lads to give us the best signing Everton have made, which might be a bit easier now. We've actually made little signs. We've seen a lot of these lads in the flesh. Player that we've been linked with in this window that you'd wish we signed, but we haven't. So, Rob, you get your go with this in a bit, mate. Don't worry. You enjoy your scotch for a little bit longer. He's quite happy there. But Jack, I'll come to you first on those 2 questions, mate.
Yeah. So I'd say 8 out of 10 overall. I said, didn't I? Best signing outside of Ancelotti would be Decore for me. I am absolutely ecstatic that we've got him. I put him in my prediction as being our player of the season, and I still stand by that. I think he will be absolutely vital going forward. Player that we were linked with that I wish we signed, I couldn't give you a name of a keeper. I don't know who that would be. A new keeper would be great, but for me, the one that I still hold a candle for from years gone by is Zaha, because I do think as an X factor and as somebody that not necessarily would take us to the next level, but just as being like another one of them players where you think they mean business, it would be him. So Wilf Zaha and 8 out of 10. And Decore, sorry.
Same to you, Les, as well?
Yeah, so I give it an 8 as well. I think it's almost impossible to split that midfield 3 that we brought in. Alan's just texted me. Alan just sent me a message, actually, Alan Catherall, on WhatsApp.
I thought you meant our Brazilian midfielder. He's been on to you saying, yeah, make sure you pick me for the best signing.
No, Alan from Wales, not Alan from Brazil. I just mentioned Ben Godfrey. So in the next bit, try and do a little bit on him, because I think he's going to be. He looks like he could really fill a number of positions if we're short. So if people are saying, no, we need right back cover, he can probably do that. He can do defensive mid, he can do centre back. But I'm just saying, I think it's impossible almost to split those 3 midfielders that we signed, because they're all so important and added just another dimension to our team that we didn't have at all last season. But sticking my neck on the line, I'm going to have to go with James, because he has got that X factor that every good team needs, and you can see the confidence he gives to other players. They know they can just give him the ball and he'll do something with it. and it'll be a perfectly weighted pass, a through ball. What is it? A progressive pass now? It's not a long ball. It's a progressive pass. He'll lash one of them down the pitch. So I think him, and players we missed out on. I'm not sure if we were actually ever properly linked with him, but I'd have loved Martinez, the Villa keeper from Arsenal.
Yeah, that's a good shout.
He does look like a really good keeper. He's like 6'4" himself, isn't he? He was good the other night. I think he's going to be a cracking player for them. And I know it was 20 million, so we're probably asking a bit much, but I think he'd have been great for us.
Good stuff, lads. Thanks very much for coming on. At least get off now. There's you're up early doors in the morning with me, aren't you, again? So hopefully we'll have a new goalie by then as well.
Yeah, fingers crossed, mate. I'll catch you in the morning. Nice
one. Jack, as well, thanks very much for coming on, mate.
You're very welcome, brother. Take care.
Top man. Cheers to the lads there for coming on. Mark Moseley and Adam Sutton will be joining us very shortly. Rob, I'll come to you on those questions as well. Have you got anyone in mind there, anything different from what the lads have been saying?
Well, I'm going to have to concur with Les. It's James Rodriguez. I think you are. Obviously, you can make the nuanced argument about, well, who is our best value for money acquisition if you factor in wages, and you could say Nkuku because no one had ever heard of him. That's the Marcel Brand signing everyone wanted us to start making, of course. But there's this old kind of I don't know if it's like an example or a metaphor about like LeBron James, and there was this argument that people would argue, why doesn't LeBron James just win MVP of the NBA every single year? Because really everyone knows he's the best, and it's because they feel like you have to kind of make a case for someone else or what have you. Others are going to have very special seasons, but everyone really knows who the best player is. I think that's the case with James Rodriguez. I agree with Jack that Doucouré is everything we've been missing from a box-to-box midfielder for a long time. I think that Allen is filling in that role that we lost in many ways, and in some ways improving upon it with this passing of losing Gay. But James Rodriguez is the difference between us being back to being a good, solid team again and us potentially being a special side again. I think that's the difference. James Rodriguez has made us into an elite offensive attack. I still can't believe I'm saying these words about Everton, but that's where we're at. And so, especially then you factor in the fact that we didn't pay any kind of fee for him, and I think it just makes it really easy. In regards to not signing someone, I'm glad Mark joined when he did, because he and I have been on the same bandwagon for a bit. And look, I'm not. It's hard for me, as I said before, to go anything lower than maybe an 8.5 or an 8 out of 10 because of all that we've done in this window, and especially getting James Rodriguez. But we were talking about this even before the game against Brighton, in that the idea being that, look, this is something special's happening here. The league as a whole is wild and crazy. I had that theory. I think I mentioned to you on one of the post matches a few weeks ago that because of the congested schedule, the short break, a variety of other factors, this is going to be a more wide open style of play. We were going to see more goals were going to be scored. Defense was, clean sheets were not going to be as big an emphasis as your ability to create chances and score. And look at what we're seeing. We've never seen scoring like this in the Premier League, at least not for the last half century or so, and more. And so I think that's bearing out. And so that kind of chaos brings disorder to the normal structure we're used to, where the same six, I believe that we're the same 6 teams finish in, a combination of spots. And because of that, I argued, and Mark has argued, and a few other, Jack is on this bandwagon too, of why not go ahead and just push the chips in and say, we want Wilfried Zaha. Why not just say we are now going to have a right-sided attack like we have on the left, or what have you? I mean, who knows? Or put him on the left and put Richarlison on the right. Who cares? I mean, that kind of attack would be the kind of attack that could push us into a different stratosphere. Now, having said all that, I think we still have a chance to be really, really good. But I would have liked potentially to have seen a super ambitious signing like that. But once you've signed James Rodriguez, you can't really fault the powers that be for what we've done. But that would have probably been my extra special cherry on top sort of wish.
Yeah, would have been nice, absolutely. Also joining the conversation now, Mark Mosey and Adam Sutton. How are we doing, lads? I'll come to you first, Adam. Enjoyed deadline day, mate, or glad to see the back of it?
Bit of both, really. I think every time it comes round, you kind of just get sucked into it all as much as you might not want to. But I've been in and out of keeping an eye on things and seeing how it unfolds. But I think our business has been done, really, and that's showing now from our early season form. The players that we've signed is quite un-Everton-like how we've gone about things, actually, that we haven't just panicked with a couple of hours to go. And yeah, we might have been getting one lad or possibly two lads in on deadline day, but at the same time, I think without those, I'd still be giving it a decent score from a transfer window perspective. So I've enjoyed Everton signings, but deadline day, I think it's just a massive marketing opportunity.
Absolutely. Mark joins us as well. Obviously, you must be gutted, mate. Sahar's not come through the door and negates every good bit of business Everton have done in this window, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we were definitely on course for a 9 or 10. Now that Rob has re-riled me on this point, I'm probably around about the 3 or 4. But no, I think the success of your transfer window can very often be gauged on how active you are forced to be on deadline day. The fact that we are kind of sat back, relaxed, looking at what we have, not necessarily, I appreciate we've got a couple of deals over the line today, but you very much felt that they were just days in the making as opposed to last minute panics. And deadline day, for so many reasons, is something that I just don't want Everton involved in. We are looking back at this window. The lads already have mentioned some of the names that we've got in, and James Rodriguez is obviously the marquee name. It's clearly a massive step forward for Everton's progress and for their evolution, as you mentioned earlier, Matt, as what Carlo Ancelotti had promised. I don't think, albeit you'll nitpick about the quality of goalkeepers and what happens if we get 4 injuries to strikers. And I mean, these things are always issues regardless of timing. But I think we can look back, and the Everton that we saw post-lockdown towards the end of last season has very quickly felt like a distant memory. That is primarily due to results, obviously, but it's also because we've got a few lads on the pitch who we can recognise and familiarise with and actually borderline start to like as well.
Yeah, just some breaking news, actually. Theo Walcott has gone to Southampton on loan. That's been confirmed. It's been pretty much on all day, hasn't it? That one, we've already seen pictures of him on social media with his Southampton gear. I mean, I'll come back to you first on this one, Adam, as well. Walcott, obviously, I think it's been on the cards for a while now, hasn't it? He's going to be on his way out to the football club, not been in a few squads recently, got on the bench at the weekend, primarily due to other injuries. But it's just been disappointing, hasn't it, really? After quite a bright start, really, at the football club, wasn't it? Just never really able to kick on, which is sort of the story of his career.
Yeah, I think it definitely is a story of his career. And I think, especially now, Everton and Theo Walcott are going in 2 totally different directions. One is on the up and one is on the down. And I think as good as his career's been, it is that, has he ever fulfilled his potential? And I think actually Theo Walcott deserves a lot of credit, and I think he'll have a lot of fans around just football in general, never mind Goodison Park and Everton as a club, because he's a professional. He's never spoken out of line. He's never found himself in scenarios where he can, the fans can get on his back from anything other than a performance point of view. And even then, when he does put the Everton shirt on, he doesn't come across as someone who's not 100% at it every week. But at the same time, there just seems to be a bit of a barrier with him when it comes to really pushing on and just like letting the shackles go type of thing. And it's frustrating, actually, because he's one of those players when you saw him coming up at Southampton and then through to Arsenal, like the youngest player to be taken to the World Cup. Everyone had such expectation on his shoulders. Then actually that can really halt someone's progression sometimes. And it's sad to see that that's the way it's gone for him. I think he's still been a really good footballer. He scored some really important goals for us. The one that obviously will always spring to mind is that Watford one last season. And even then, for the price we paid for him, for the years we've had him for, he's put in some really good performances. And yeah, that 190 however minute winner against them after being 2-0 down will live long in the memory.
I think Adam makes a really good point about how sometimes when a player leaves, you have to sometimes view them in a more nuanced fashion. The arc of Theo Walcott's career has been, to many, unfulfilled promise, just because they saw so much ability. A lot of that unfulfilled potential had to do with the fact that he just had a horrible injury record for a lot of years. In fact, I give him a lot of credit coming to Everton, because I assumed he would constantly be injured, and yet he was remarkably durable for us during the time he was here. And to Adam's point, you can't fault Theo Walcott for his effort or his professionalism. You can fault the production. I know we all lamented whenever he just could not finish off a prime scoring chance, and he just doesn't have that in him. I mean, it's sort of a case of he is what he is. He is exactly what he was when we bought him, and that's about how it turned out. I think the nuance of it is that you can look back on the move and say, for the price we paid, the wages we paid, it was not a good move. But I will say, to his credit, he can only control so much. He came here, he put in a real effort the entire time he was here. He was a model professional. If you guys remember all the angst in many WhatsApp chat rooms over Ademola Lookman not being able to get in the team over Walcott. I mean, everyone hated Walcott for that, when really, as time has gone on, we've seen more and more that was more about Ademola Lookman and what he lacked in regards to his commitment and consistent effort and professionalism versus a Walcott. I will say that just in the short term, I kind of liked having Walcott as an option late in matches to come on and offer some pace and offer a guy who was going to definitely keep up his end of the bargain defensively late in games. But at the same time, I mean, if you got an opportunity to get at least a chunk of his contract off the wage bill, you do it.
50% has been reported, hasn't it?
Yeah.
50% of his wages.
And by the way, 50%, and everyone will be like, "Oh, that's not very much." I mean, that just speaks to how difficult it has been today, and in this window in particular, to get players off of the wage. But I think that if we'd had real opportunities to move on from Bernard, obviously Besic and Sandro and Balassi, who've been spoken of, and others, I mean, we probably would have done it, but it's just been exceedingly difficult. So I think you take what you can get. You get half of the remainder of his contract taken care of by Southampton, and you thank him for his service and you move on.
Yeah, just very quickly, Walcott just put on Twitter there, my page is just refreshed, so it's gone. Oh, it's back again. It's been some starts to the season for Everton. We have a great squad, and with Mr. Ancelotti in charge, I'm sure it's going to be a great campaign. Wishing the fans, players and staff the best of luck. See you soon. I wouldn't expect anything different from a classy fella in general. He's been great around the place. I think everybody would absolutely say that. But on the pitch, Mose, in regards to where this leaves Everton, maybe a little bit short right side, you could say, although Rodriguez has done excellently there. You'd probably say Gordon and Iwobi, the next behind him if something was to happen there. And something me and you were speaking about today in regards to just the attacking options in general. And, Walcott never played through the middle for Everton, but he's, always a third or fourth choice option to be there. And without Keane and without Walcott, there's a little bit of depth lacking in that certainly those attacking positions now. And that, if you're going to be hypercritical of Everton's window, then that's probably one of the areas you'd pinpoint.
Yeah, I know Walcott's left, but it's been a great transfer window for the other half of the Allardyce too. Because Senkosen found himself on the brink of the squad as soon as he's back from injury. But
what about Sandro?
Don't.
I still believe, Matt. I still believe Sandro can come good. He's still young.
in terms of players who the window has been kind to, you probably would throw Anthony Gordon in there, because as much as we've seen brief glimmers of this lad, and we all appreciate that his talent is definitely a potential at the moment and one for the future, I think the the anxiety has been there from Everton fans in terms of, oh God, he's not making squads after good performances. Are we Ademola looking in Mac 2, something going on behind the scenes, and everyone's head falls off because he's not involved every week? And you probably look at what's happened in the last 48 hours and in the last week and think Ancelotti has a plan for this lad. Doesn't necessarily have one for someone like Theo Walcott, who, as you rightly say, we wish all the best for, but it feels like the football club has just naturally outgrown him and what he can offer. I think everything we've seen from Everton, in particular in the home games so far this season, has probably been a little bit more refined than you would expect Theo Walcott to be a part of. And that's nothing against his footballing ability, but his strengths have always been quite raw in terms of pace, not necessarily, as Rob said, in terms of final delivery, which seems to be his middle name and mentioned in every sentence since he ever broke through at the age of 16. So it does feel like a natural parting. In terms of numbers, I do think it's a concern. Possibly not for league games if you can keep everyone fit, but that is an ideal scenario. We ultimately still need to get through. I appreciate the Carabao Cup is gaining importance now, and the opportunities for fringe players are not quite there. And that's potentially the reason why you do let people like Walcott move on. But when you do get opportunities, which you hope that Everton may do in early rounds of the FA Cup, for example, to rotate slightly, to give someone like Richarlison a week off, unless we make a move in the next transfer window, which is 7.5 weeks time. You potentially look at that and think, are we leaving ourselves short? Given the amount of time that is between the two windows, I think Ancelotti is probably quite happy to be patient and wait for the right opportunity to come up. People like Wilfried Zaha will eternally be mentioned with this football club. And as much as Rob alluded to that I am a fan of his and think he could have been really devastating in this Everton setup, I think the temptation will be not only for Everton to bide their time in terms of picking the right quality, but to allow fractures in the relationship between someone like Zaha and Crystal Palace, for example, to emerge. I think the panic of losing players on the cheap next summer will definitely kick in, and clubs will see the winter transfer window possibly as an opportunity for a final cash in on someone like Zaha. So I do feel like, depending on the situation which Everton find themselves in a couple of months, the transfer sagas may not be over for this season, but I'm content waiting for 8 weeks to add to that attacking lineup. And I think, given what we have built on primarily in the first 4 weeks of the season, what Evertonian would tell you now that they are not happy with this squad. There will always be tiny arguments about small additions and small nuances that possibly could have improved this squad a couple of percent. But given what we've been through in the last few years, I don't think we've got any room for a complaint at the moment.
Just one thing on the Walcott there, which I think is quite funny. Rebecca Williams, who works for Sky, who's been covering this all day, has just tweeted there saying, 15 hours after I first reported Everton and Southampton were in talks, it's finally been done. And I remember getting up this morning and putting Sky Sports News on and seeing her in a room at home reporting this, and it was bright outside, and he just posted the video up on Sky. It's pitch black. She looks absolutely drained. She's been on the phone to Southampton all day trying to find out where Theo Walcott is, bless her. But yeah, he has gone, obviously.
Theo Walcott?
I've just seen it. He was on the phone to Sky, but I don't know what he had to say. But amazing stuff. What Adam and Mark, I know you're going to go in about 5-10 minutes. One player that we have signed today we haven't even mentioned yet. Ben Godfrey. Obviously, I don't think anyone sitting in this conversation has watched him, forensically at Norwich over the last few years. What he is might prove me wrong there in that sense, but. From what we've seen of him, Adam, what people have said about him, and certainly his interview today with the club, and how relaxed he looked in every situation, and what he himself said, him being able to play in a few different positions, it feels like he's the right sort of character, and looks like he's going to be an accomplished player.
Yeah, I think he fits the mould of a young English centre half at Everton, which I think out of any position over the past couple of years. We've done really well there, actually. I think with the likes of Mason Holgate, Jared Branthwaite looks at a real talent, even John Stones, and then you move back towards Jagielka, Lescott, and we've always seemed to have a good eye for getting in a young, powerful and hungry centre-half, really. And I think he suits that, as you say, the way he spoke in his interview, the way he's come across as wanting to be part of this project, and who wouldn't at the moment. And as much as it's good to have these flair players or these South Americans and the Europeans coming in, there's nothing better than bred and young talent from England who can hopefully push on and take us further whilst bettering themselves and from a career point of view. So yeah, I'm really excited. He looks like a powerful, pacey, and I wouldn't even say no nonsense, because I don't think there is such thing as a no nonsense centre half anymore. He actually looks like the type of player who can bring the ball out from the back, as he spoke about in his interview, and that real modern day way of playing that everyone seems to be doing now, whether it's your defenders standing on your own byline and receiving it from your keeper, or fizzing it into the number 9 or the number 10's feet to get it on the half turn. So I think that's really important for us moving forward. Whether he comes into the 11, I don't think he will for now. But then that's even more of a testament to how well we are playing at the moment. And in years gone by and transfer windows gone by, we're starting to do this panic buying in the last couple of hours, couple of days, because we don't have the foundation set. Whereas now we're able to bring lads in. We're not rushing them into the starting 11. We're not piling that pressure on them which could make and break them. More often than not does break them. We're actually giving them a chance to come in and develop as a footballer, develop as a young man, and then take us forward after they've got that confidence.
Rob?
Yeah, I mean, I have some thoughts on Godfrey, though. I just looked at the clock and realized it's 14 minutes until the deadline closes. Is that
probably
correct?
not going to get Sahara at this point.
Yeah. Stop it, Mark. Don't pour salt in my wounds. No, I was just thinking, we're all kind of taking for granted that this keeper deal is going to get done, and I'm assuming it will, but it's 13 minutes now and it's getting close. I wanted to say something about Godfrey. You're right, Matt. I am definitely behind on my Norwich watching over the last year or so. But I'm as you know, I'm really always fascinated by the strategic thinking behind squad building and team building. I think that's the thing that I try to bring most to this type of discussion. There's no position right now for me that has more kind of fascinating questions to it than center half, because of the dynamics at play. I mean, we've just committed relatively significant money, not even relative, I mean, significant money to acquiring Godfrey. So you assume he is here for the future. I do think what makes it kind of a complicated discussion is that, when you were interviewing, I forget who you interviewed, Matt, from on the Norwich side.
Michael Bailey.
Yeah. I thought it was a great discussion. If you guys haven't listened to it, you should go back and do it. But Godfrey was kind of prickly about the questions around what position he is. And he feels like he's definitely a center half. And yet, when you read the piece on the club website, it was all about, I can play a bunch of positions. I can trust the manager completely to put me wherever. And so I find that fascinating, because on the one hand, Michael Greenall, who's been on our show several times, has made an argument in our group chat. I know, Matt, that really Godfrey could be, he feels like he could be an elite holding midfielder. But let's just say for argument's sake, he is a center half right now. Everton now have 4 center halves on significant money, whether that's in the transfer fee you've paid for Godfrey. He's probably making the least of the 4, and the 4 I'm referring to be Holgate, Mina, and Michael Keane. You've just signed Michael Keane to a new deal, which, again, deals don't necessarily mean a whole lot in regards to the fact that you think you're going to keep a guy for 5 years, but they're not insignificant either. But the bottom, because that may just be for protection for when someone does come in with an offer for Keane, or when inevitably Man United get bored again with their current setup and decide to overpay for someone. Maybe they come in and offer us stupid money for Michael Keane. I have no idea. But the bottom line is that we have 4 center halves now on big money. And I think it's a really fascinating discussion, because I think anyone who assumes they know who is going to be the odd man out here or what's going to happen, I think a lot of that's going to be dictated by fitness. I think a lot of it's going to be dictated by just in general related to that circumstances and so on. I think that, for instance, and we talked about this before, Matt, currently the most sellable asset of those 4 is Michael Keane, because he's on a new contract, but he's not on stupid money. He's English. He's not too old, and he's not super young either. And so I think he's a year and a half, maybe older than Mina or whatever. Whereas Mina, I think right now is not as sellable, not because I don't think he's quality. You guys know how I feel about Yerry Mina, but because of his his recent injury track record. He's on, I think, 110 a week. He's on a big money. And so I don't think, if you think it was hard to move off of guys like Balassi or Sandro right now, why is Yerry Mina going to give up any money to go anywhere else right now? I mean, he's playing well, he's starting, he's popular in the dressing room, et cetera. And so I guess my point is that I think in some ways Holgate, who I do believe, of course, is part of this thing in the future, Holgate's going to have a real challenge getting back into the starting 11. I just think that there are some interesting dynamics there between those 4. Yeah. And I think anyone who knows how this is going to, kind of flesh out by next summer, I think that as we saw last season, when we all thought that the preferred partnership would be Zuma and Keane, and then we got Mina starting a lot of games, we got the revelation of Mason Holgate, a lot can change really fast. But the bottom line is we have 4 center halves on big money or costing a significant financial contribution. And I think that position will certainly be the one to watch as we go into next summer.
Yeah, Paddy's just messages there saying Rob's trying to sell Michael Keane again. So we'll leave it at that now. Very quickly, because I know Murs and Adam have got to get off before Dave Downey joins us to take us past 11 o'clock. I asked just questions before we came on tonight. So we'll rattle through these very quickly. Rating out of 10 for the window, Mark?
9.
Adam?
9.
It can't be any less than that. Have you seen James Rodriguez play football?
Well, that was going to be next. Who's our best signing?
Oh, well, I'll be devil's advocate and say Alan. But it's definitely James, but hear me out on Alan, because I think he's just the player that we needed most, the position that we desperately desired. So as much as the answer is definitely James, Alan.
Adam, for you?
I'm going to have to agree with Jack and say Doucouré. Actually, I think he was one of those slightly under the radar. Everyone had the hype around Alan and James, and I think he is Premier League proven. And he showed on the weekend that even when he doesn't have those two, Alan or Gomez around him, he's still able to drag us from defensive scenarios into attacking ones. He's box to box. He's just a real central midfielder that we've been screaming out for. And as good as Alan is at filling that Idrissa Gueye void, I think actually Doucouré brings something that we haven't had in longer than that. And that is really, really important for us moving forward.
And finally, before you both shoot off, a player we were linked with, who we didn't sign, you would have liked us to have signed. I'll come to you first on this one, Adam, because I know Moses is going to say.
It would have been Max Aarons. I think he would have been a really good fit for us. However, Seamus Coleman proving me wrong week on week, and however long he can do that for, then fantastic. But yeah, I think a right back would have been really good.
Moses?
Can't really think. Wilfred Zaha, obviously, because he would have transformed this side into a certain Champions League contending team, and I have absolutely no doubt about it, because as Rob said, he makes games terrifying for the opposition, that you can never settle when that lad is in the opposition. And the thing that probably raised my hopes in the last couple of weeks was the fact that he kind of looked like he'd thrown it in at Crystal Palace. I think he's had a poor game against Everton. Obviously, he had a poor game at Stamford Bridge at the weekend. And you got the whole sort of Yakubu at Middlesbrough vibes that he was just waiting for someone to come and rescue him. And Carlo Ancelotti was ready to be that man. Someone in that ilk, even if it wasn't someone like Wilfried Zaha, it's someone who can just transform the game and win it in moments that games that are on a knife edge, which it looks like a lot of Premier League games are at the moment, can just be taken by one individual. I'm surprised that the Hirving Lozano rumours didn't really ramp up because he looked like someone who was destined for a move. He once went to Naples, which means that Everton definitely want him, according to the media. So someone in an attacking mode like that could transform a game would have been probably an ideal pick. But I think what we've come out of is excellent business.
Lads, thanks very much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate your time this late hour. We'll speak to you again soon on the show this week, no doubt.
See you soon.
Nice one. Mark Mosey, Adam Sutton there. Thanks very much to both of them for joining us. And now joining us is effectively the equivalent of our Jim White here on the Blue Room for the final part. We've got 5 minutes left. Are Everton going to get Will Zaha in? Will Lozano come in on a surprise deal? Is Gianluigi Donnarumma about to rock up? Will Moussa Dembele finally become an Everton player? The man to tell us is undoubtedly Dave Downey. Dave, it's 4 minutes to 11. Are you expecting any of those lads to rock up in Royal Blue?
I'm sorry to join this conversation now with that Dembele dig, Matt. That's below the belt, that. I know. I can categorically say I don't think that anything else is going to happen tonight apart from the incoming goalkeeper from Roma, which is probably a little bit of a strange one for me. I'm sure you've had the discussion about Jordan Pickford and maybe some competition for him and things like that. But penny for Jonas Lossel's thoughts. If he doesn't feel that he's adequate enough cover or able to give Jordan Pickford some competition, it does beg the question why he's still at the football club. But these things are really strange with goalkeepers, aren't they? The second choice and third choice goalkeepers of football clubs tend to be on the dodgy end. Just ask Jurgen Klopp about that in regards to what happened last night with that game in Aston Villa. He didn't even look like a goalkeeper, did he? So you do run the risk of these things happening. And also to add to that, I think if we do get Olsen over the line, I said to Rob in the WhatsApp group, somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but I do quite seriously believe that I don't think he'd get a game anyway. I think it'd be seen more as a catalyst to pick up Jordan Pickford's performances as opposed to somebody who's genuinely going to take the jersey off him. So, yeah, pretty quiet finish to the window. Obviously, Godfrey secured this morning, but we can't help but be delighted with what we've got in so far because they've already proven the worth, in my opinion. And let's hope that they come back reinvigorated from wherever they end up going across the international break. And I think we've begged or been desperate for a window like this for a long, long time. We finally got it. I dare to say anything else that comes in or potential shocks we might see overnight, i.e. what happened with Marouane Fellaini all those years ago. I think we're just being a little bit greedy now.
Yeah, fair enough. I think it'll be a massive shock if anything like that happened now. Less than 2 minutes before the window closes. But the one thing I wanted to speak about very quickly, Rob, is in regards to the players that we've not been able to get out the door. I was sort of took it for granted today that Sandro would go, the Tosin would go, the Besic would go. There's a lot of, Ike Bolasie still at the football club as well. There's rumours about Fabian Delph throughout the
Good
summer.
news, Dave. Bolasie's still at the club.
That's great. That's not a free shirt. Won't keep him on side with, is it? So.
But I think I'm surprised by all of those lads still being here effectively. And I've sort of put on Twitter before, I think it's indicative of the world at the moment, where I imagine a lot of footballers probably don't want to uproot the family in these times, which are uncertain and difficult, and you've got to get tested and integrate yourself into a new environment where you can't really properly integrate yourself into it. And as a result, I think that's probably why players at Everton, like the ones I've mentioned, and certainly players at other clubs, Liverpool today, I've not been able to get Harry Wilson or Shaqiri or a lot of that mob out the door either. It feels like it's the same for a lot of clubs. And for us who've, renowned for having a large wage bill and one that we need to cut down, maybe that's a little bit of a worry going forward.
Well, I mean, look, we talked about several times during all of our discussions in the early transfer shows, at the beginning of the summer, about the kind of the unknowns of the financial environment we were coming into. I remarked that I don't think that we really fully grasp just how potentially dire some of the financial situations that some of these clubs are. And that works in two ways. It can be an opportunity in that you may be able to get players for less than you might ordinarily do, just because there are some cash hungry clubs out there. I saw that as an opportunity, and I think Everton in some ways have taken advantage of that. I still cannot believe, and I'm still processing in my head, how Real Madrid didn't get even a nominal fee, it sounds like, for James Rodriguez. But when it comes to, but it also works in the opposite way as well. Think about how desperate you are if you're an Everton fan to rid yourself of Balassi and Sandro and all of these other, Besic and all these other reminders of failure past, if you will. Well, when you think about that, you have to remember that as much as you want them out, the corresponding factor to that is how much does another club who is in a challenging financial environment want to pay any significant money for your underperforming players? I think it's just one of those situations where if we were living in a more normal world, we might be able to find some creative way to make it happen. But right now, I think that there's generally some tightening of purse strings that's going on across European football, and I think that's certainly a factor in.
Just on that, one of those players we mentioned there has actually just left. It's been confirmed. Sandro Ramirez has signed for Huesca, who were newly promoted to La Liga this season on loan. So that was right on the deadline, pretty much. Perfect. Not much reporting around that throughout the course of the day, but Everton just managed to get him out the door. So that's another one, isn't it, Dave? And I was just saying before, I sort of had hopes for him to be our third choice centre forward this season and stage a late renaissance, but it's not going to happen now.
Yeah.
No.
Go ahead, Dave.
I was just going to say, I think that was one. I think that's a big one for us to get rid of, isn't it? Given the wages he would have been on. I
can tell you now, Dave, Huesca will not be paying his £120,000 a week wages on their own. I think it'll be a bit of a Walcott situation, maybe, where we're paying about half of it.
We've just completed the loan deal for Olsen, by the way.
There we go.
On Sandro, that's it's still good news for us, isn't it? Even just to get half of that hefty wage bill off the books. You think of what's happened today as well with Walcott going and half of that money being paid by Southampton now. So that's, you can actually put firm fees that we won't be paying, which we would have a day ago, a few hours ago in some cases. It are factored into the accounts in this year, and the club will then be able to do some budgeting towards what they want to do in January or in next summer as well, which of course now each of those windows look increasingly important. The more games Everton win, the more important that recruitment becomes. Because I still don't believe we have a squad in essence that is able to sustain this continuation of form. I think that most Blues accept that, and we are enjoying it for what it is right now, and we will continue to do so for the next fortnight at least. But beyond that, I think the club's starting to get itself on a level foot in this sort of crisis that we've had for several years now in buying these players in and not being able to get rid of them, or their wage bills has hamstrung the club, far too often. I'm pretty sure if you were to have a candid and open conversation with Marcel Brands and other members of the board, I think they'd probably be able to tell you in terms of how much money and the number of players they've had to miss out on in order to just keep on going in terms of paying these other lads. We've had them for such a long time, we've done nothing. And so, credit for the club for taking the plunge with what they've done this summer, because I didn't see it happening. I didn't see the fees we've paid, even though it's relatively nominal for us. in this day and age. I didn't see the club spending and doing as much business as it has. I thought we'd possibly get one or two in. The talk at the start of the summer was that it was going to be low moves and free transfers only. Well, we sit here at the end of the window now, looking back on it, thinking they've still spent a pretty hefty amount on players. The Rodriguez fee will be minimal, if not free. So they've done some outstanding business. I'm quite happy and content that many people seem to have got the sell on value thing out of the system now as well. We're not sitting here bogged down by, well, we can't sell this player if he's not good enough. I think we've proven now that it's all what Carlo Ancelotti's done and Brands has done this summer has done a complete U-turn on the policy that I think they set out with. Certainly Brands last year in sort of buying to sell for an increased value. We've done it in one way, I think, in Godfrey, young English centre-half, 22 years old, signed in for 20 million. I think the BBC put a report out earlier saying that his actual market value is somewhere near double that. In terms of how they work that out. I'm not too sure how it works, but he's an investment. So you look at what they've done, and it's very much about the here and now, but with a slight eye on the future, and that seems to fit us a hell of a lot better than going out firstly like we did 4 or 5 years ago when Machiri first come in and blowing huge amounts of cash on players we thought were about the here and now, but were actually just the best players at lesser sides. And the sort of straddle the divide between getting that sort of player in and somebody who's really young that we perhaps can sell later on in the squad has some asset value. I think we've struck a balance now and it seems to be really working for us. And everyone we've brought in so far has been absolutely perfect. Listen to people giving their ratings. I don't think I could veer away from a 10 out of 10 this window. Another striker, yes, but you're talking about luxuries then. Zaha, yes. You're talking about players who add a little bit of sprinkle of more quality, a little bit more of the James Rodriguez magic dust type of thing. But they've got the essentials, Matt, and I think that's what we could have hoped for this window. We were very concerned, weren't we, because the business was done relatively late. You look at it now, they've hit the ground running. You can't ask for much more. You can't ask for any more, I don't think, if you're realistic and an Evertonian.
Oh no, we're being completely we're all wrapped up in it here and getting carried away. Yeah. Apparently, reports say Sandro's gone permanently, so it's a 3-year deal with Huesca. Wow. So that means So Paddy's reported it as well. Actually, 3-year deal Huesca. So finally, that's those wages off the bill as well, which is great for everything because he was on in excess of £100,000 a week, wasn't he? So I'm sure the club will be made up with that.
It's another $500,000 off the bill a month, isn't it?
Yeah.
So fantastic to see that. And, I look at Schneiderlin went earlier on in the window and things. So I think Marcel Brands will be having a nice quiet
Moise Keane as well. PSG will be playing all of his wages, you'd imagine, with the stuff he's on. So.
And he'll either been on a hefty fee as well, Matt. So I think Marcel Brands will be sitting there tonight putting his feet up with a nice strong drink, thinking that he's done an appropriate job and a job we needed him to do, and the recruitment wise he's hit the nail on the head. So whereas there was the indecision and I think the jury was out on Brands given what's been and gone when Marco Silva was at the club, I think he's completely redeemed any doubts many people had about him, and it looks like it's onwards Evertonians, doesn't it? Like the front of your meaningless season ticket says right now.
You pay for a cardboard season ticket. Just a lot of people in the comments as well saying Barsi and Besic could easily still go to Championships clubs before that window shut as well. So that's them not necessarily sticking around.
So,
but
question just a question on that. Besic is being strongly linked with Rangers. Mm-hmm. Is that still apply in terms of British transfer window? Or is it just in English?
I'm not 100% sure on that. We'll have to, if anyone in the comments knows that, actually, not great luck this is it, I was asking people who are watching this to tell us, but if anyone in the comments...
who'd have thought we'd be discussing the minute details of Mo Besic going to Rangers at the end of the deadline day? It throws up all sorts of nonsense, doesn't it? But, I mean, I seen far and wide a couple of people actually saying that Besic could be featured in this squad. I'm not sure where they get that from, and I'm not sure why he's still hanging around now. It's still a couple of years left on a contract. I mean, he could get a testimonial at this stage, Mo Besic, and that's probably quite fittingly an example of where we used to be in terms of offering out these huge extortionate contracts to players that hadn't shown anywhere near what was required to deserve that sort of deal. So if he goes, if Balassi goes, heaven sent if he does, in my opinion.
I love the way you looked over your shoulder then, just like to check he's there. Well, waiting to get
the social media experiences I've had over the past few days have caused me to be quite paranoid, looking over my shoulder and seeing who might have a microphone or something worse with them when they're around me. But I'm not sure if you've seen the slight ordeal I had with one of Sky Sports News' reporters earlier today. So, you can't make a joke these days, can you? But yeah, if he goes, if Besic goes, that'll be an incredible window for Everton. That'd be the cherry on top of the icing on the cake, I think.
Besic may still not go, but according to my Google search just now, there are still 50 minutes left in the Scottish window. Yeah. So maybe, you never know. Yeah. Who knows?
Well, the club have confirmed the signing of Robin Olsen, season-long loan from AS Roma, as we expected. So that one is boxed off. He is through the door for the next year or so. We're going to, before we stay for another 10 minutes or so, if you've got any questions for Dave or Rob, give us a shout and we'll rattle through them. But we're going to have Rob and Dave to answer the questions I put out on Twitter earlier on today before we do get to some of them. So, Rob, you already give your rating for the window. Who's the best signing? James Rodriguez, you sort of hinted at before.
Yeah, no, I didn't hint at it. I absolutely think he is the best signing. And again, I think when you're judging a window, you have to judge the body of work. James Rodriguez in isolation wouldn't have been enough to create this impact. But he is, as I said before, the player. I know I've used this word a ton lately, but he's transcendent. And I believe that he is the player that takes us from being potentially good to being, a great side, at least by our standards over the last decade or so. I did have one other thought on the window in general in regards to the keeper. This is, Dave made the point, which is very Dave of him, and I love it because he's probably right in that there's a good chance, and maybe if it goes to plan, there's a great chance that Olsen doesn't play, that the whole idea here is to somehow motivate the enigmatic Jordan Pickford somehow. I'm skeptical, like I think Jack was or others are, about whether or not you can actually accomplish that. But I do have a theory, and that is that the goalkeeping position in some ways has to be evaluated differently than other positions, and that I think that sometimes whenever we rate players, we always are looking at the raw talent. What, do we rate their overall ability? And in doing so, and I put this out on Twitter earlier, and in doing so, I think we sometimes try to make this comparison of whose best is better, right? So I think everyone has sort of argued over time that Jordan Pickford's best, his peak, the peak version of Jordan Pickford includes quite a bit of talent, this huge ceiling, et cetera, et cetera. But I think with the keeper position, you almost have to toss that kind of criteria out, because the bottom line with Jordan Pickford is that we don't see his best consistently enough. So I might take a guy who is less talented or has highs that are not quite as high as Jordan Pickford to get a more consistent level. And I know I've used the term 7 out of 10, but hey, I get that if you want to just parse out YouTube highlights, that I know some of the rounds were going, some of the poor moments of Robin Olsen were going around Twitter. But I would also argue that my counterpoint is that you can find an isolated YouTube clip of Jordan Pickford making a great penalty save or making a really cool looking save, but that does not tell the full story of the player. And so my argument would be that any assumptions anyone's making right now, like a lot of people are saying, well, he's not being brought in to replace Jordan Pickford, he's just being brought in as competition or what have you. Well, I'd say two things. One is that clearly they didn't think Lossell could provide that, and they, for whatever reason, they think that this guy can. And two, I think that we don't really know, but what I can say is that there's a reason they're making this late in the last, dying moments of the window sort of move for a guy. And that tells you something about how Carlo Ancelotti feels about Jordan Pickford and his relative faith. So yes, if it all goes to plan, this move enough is alone to somehow mentally alter Jordan Pickford in a way that we get the best out of him. But I don't think that we can just assume this guy won't play, because I think Jordan Pickford is sort of on notice now. And I will say, if this guy can come in and he doesn't have to be perfect, but if he can be a guy that avoids the big mistake, you've got an attack now that is so good that if we can just be clean at the back, doesn't mean we don't allow any goals, but if we can be just generally sound at the back, I think that having a keeper that our defenders don't have to think about so much is really key, because I know that has been brought up before. I can't remember who said that once about Pickford. I think this was after some incident last season or the season before. There have been so many of them, I've lost count. But the idea that keepers who play as erratically as Jordan Pickford create doubt in the defenders in front of them, and that imperils them. And so if you have a boring keeper, as I've proposed, then maybe that's the solution. But I think it'll be interesting to see what happens next.
Yeah, just an interesting on also Greg O'Keefe from The Athletic before said that he played 20 games on loan at Roma, from Roma at Cagliari last season, Serie A. He did 29 goals and kept 4 clean sheets, but returned to Roma when Cagliari's first choice goalkeeper returned from injury. It says he was originally selected by Roma on the recommendation of sporting director Monchi, who was obviously done great things at Seville, who was himself a former goalkeeper. He signed for Roma in 2018 for €8.5 million and has 37 international caps for Sweden. So, yeah, I suppose we'll have to wait and see when it comes to Robin Olsen. But Dave, final word to you. You've got to answer the questions put out on Twitter before. I don't know if you've seen them or not, because I know you've been having a few back and forth with various ex-players and Sky presenters today. But I asked everyone to give the window a rating out of 10. First and foremost,
it's got to be 10. I think we couldn't have asked for much. Look, Everton are sitting top of the Premier League table largely because of the players they've signed, and some excellent management from Carlo Ancelotti and some great coaching of a prodigious young striker we hope is going to go from strength to strength. But the main part of why that's happened is because we brought in 3 top quality players, hopefully added a 4th in young Godfrey as well. And now a goalkeeper we hope will do what is required, and that is basically give Jordan Pickford a massive kick up the arse. So I think it's a 10. I think the only thing you probably could have asked for that was reaching for the stars a little bit would have been a first choice goalkeeper, but that would have required an astronomical fee going into the final day, and also a striker. I know Keane, people are saying cover wasn't required, but I think there's a little bit of an argument to say we might well have needed an additional striker as well. I just don't want Dom to be burdened by a load of responsibility this window. So the only other option we have up there is really Richarlison playing up front, or Ellis Sims being given that chance and that opportunity, possibly in the second half of the season. But other than that, yeah, the recruitment has been an overwhelming success for me, and it's definitely a 10 out of 10.
And the last 2 questions before we wrap up, I'll put to you tonight, Dave. Our best signing and the player we were linked with that we didn't sign, or you wish we had signed.
Okay. Firstly, I think our best signing's been Abdoulaye Doucouré. I know everybody will have said Rodriguez, but you look at his impact on this side in that midfield area, I think it'll go under the radar because of Rodriguez's skills and what he's going to bring to this football club with his goals and his assists, and he's going to light up the pitch for us more often than not this season. It's quite obvious. I think he'd be the obvious choice because he is our marquee signing. We've never had a footballer like him at the club. Certainly in my lifetime, I don't think he comes anywhere near the level of talent and I suppose fame that he brings, which is obviously important these days for commercialisation and stuff. Doucouré, for me, he just looks effortless in his work rate. I was saying to a friend earlier today, he seems to take one stride to everyone else's three. And he doesn't look conventionally quick, but he is rapid. He gets about the pitch so well. He's so clever in his movement. I think he's asked to do a number of roles and particular jobs during games, and he's nailed every single one of them. He was a little bit shaky in the first half away at Crystal Palace, but that was credit to them. I think they got right in his face and started giving Everton a physical battle. But you look at what he's done in terms of saving us so far. You think of what he did against Spurs, that last-ditch sliding tackle on Lucas Moura, and you think of that one with Wilfred Zaha, almost clean through on goal away at Crystal Palace. So the lad's actually saved us points so far, in my mind, and he's only going to get better and better as he works in cohesion with these other new lads we've got in there as well. And finally, the player I wish we'd signed pales a little bit into insignificance now because we've secured the fourth centre-half, but it'd probably actually be Gabriel, who looked like it was sewn up earlier in the year. In lockdown, obviously, circumstances changed with finances and whatnot. He's looked really good for Arsenal when I've seen him. Arteta has chosen to bench him a couple of times. I think he got away at Anfield. He opted for David Luiz, and that obviously didn't work well because he lost the game. But he looks like he's going to be a really, really top defender in the Premier League. So probably him. But it's the blow's being cushioned by, again, from everything we've seen in Ben Godfrey. This lad's going to be another one who, in that Mason Holgate mould, who should kick on. 22, he can play a variety of roles across the back four and even in defensive midfield, and he looks like a real athlete as well. So, not too despondent over missing out on Gabriel now, and we have that much needed additional central defender we've been crying out for since Kurt Zouma left, which feels like a lifetime ago.
Good stuff. Me and Dave are going to go off to bed. Rob, you've been drinking scotch since 4 p.m. there now, your time on a Monday afternoon. What are you going to do for the rest of the day? I'm sure you've got grand plans after that. You must be ready to go.
Man. I mean, life is my oyster now. I'm full of that Scotch-driven confidence about this window and about the future and everything else. But
there's some NFL on tonight, isn't there? You can watch.
There is, and I'm cooking dinner tonight, so I've got plenty to do. I always sleep a little better after the window is closed, so I'm I don't have to worry about like missing news in the middle of the night or anything like that. So glad it's over. Think it's been a good window. I think the break is probably, as much as I hated breaking our momentum, is coming at a good time, and so I think that to Dave's point, I can't quibble. I think it's like an 8.5 or a 9, but my goodness, this is the best version of Everton we've had in a decade, and I am so excited. And let's all enjoy this happiness right now, because we have certainly endured enough sadness and pain. I think this is a time to just put your feet up for the next couple of weeks. Enjoy taking a break from things and enjoy the fact that Everton are at the top of the table.
You say that, Rob, but the next 10 days is going to be a scramble to sign Josh King now, and we wouldn't be able to.
Well, it wouldn't sign another forward. It certainly wouldn't. Yeah. But hey, look, again, we're no matter what, we're in a really good position. So I'm very excited.
Yeah, thanks very much to everybody who's tuned in to watch this on YouTube. Loads and loads of people getting involved tonight, so we really appreciate it. If you want to hear more from us, as ever, reminder, we are on Patreon. We are doing content every single day on there up until the Merseyside derby. That's patreon.com/The Blue Room Extra. I'm on there in the morning. Not much sleep for me tonight with Les Roberts, giving you all the reaction from last night. Probably some quotes from Olsen as well to get through, as well as anything else that breaks in the following hours. And then Subs Weekly tomorrow. Dave's back for that one, along with Paddy Boylan. And Alexandra Topping from The Guardian as well is making her debut on the show. Really looking forward to that as well. It should be fascinating. But thanks very much to everyone again. Thanks very much to Dave. And a special thanks to Rob, who's been here for the duration tonight. Really good stuff from him and all our guests. You've been listening to our Deadline Day show here on The Blue Room. Thanks very much for tuning in. Up the toffees, and you will speak to you again very, very soon. Nice one, lads.